All eyes were on Texas for the third Democratic presidential debate last night. And it wasn't just Democratic voters that tuned in. President Trump's campaign was laser focused on how the candidates performed. Joining us from Texas with their reaction to last night's spectacle is Tim Murtaugh. He's the director of communications for President Trump's re-election campaign. Tim, thank you so much for joining me.
Sure thing. Happy to be here.
Oh, well, absolutely. Tim, what was the biggest takeaway for the Trump campaign last night from last night's debate?
I think the biggest takeaway is all the things that the Democrat candidates are planning to take away. First among those items would be private health insurance. All the Democrats on stage agree that there's going to be a government takeover of health care if they're elected president, and that means the elimination of private health insurance. That means if you have a Blue Cross card in your wallet, you might as well tear it up and throw it out. That's the biggest takeaway. At the same time that they're telling people that you can't have your private health care, they're also going to be giving free taxpayer-funded health care to illegal immigrants. That much is very, very clear. So I don't think anyone stood out last night, and not one of those candidates was particularly impressive. And our view is that President Trump will dominate whoever it is that comes out of that field.
Mm-hmm. And one of the things that is interesting here is that many of the candidates agreed with the president on trade. Does the president and does the campaign see it as a victory that they have moved the conversation on China so much that almost every candidate basically agreed that it was a problem and that they're at least going about the tariffs in the right direction?
Here's the thing about China. Everyone who has ever run for president campaigned on getting tough on China because over the decades, China has been a bad actor. Everyone knows that and everyone agrees on trade. China cheats. They steal technology. They force the transfer of technology, stealing intellectual property. They manipulate their currency. They do all those things and everyone agrees and everyone runs for president saying that he or she is going to get tough on China. But no one has ever done it until President Trump came along. And so when the Democrats stand up and of course their reflex is to criticize the president no matter what he's doing, but if they stop and actually think about his approach to China, they realize that he's right. And the president's policies are in fact working. You see, China's economy is beginning to crack. Their auto industry is failing. Their banks are failing. You saw just a few weeks ago when they just so overtly and obviously manipulated their currency yet again, practically out in the open. That's proof that their backs are against the wall and they know that they're in trouble. And now we know that they want to return to the negotiating table. And so that is proof that the president's policies are working for China. Meanwhile, our own economy here in the United States is strong, continues to grow, and is just plowing forward. And notable, I would say, while people on the stage last night were generally agreeing with the president's approach on China, we didn't hear a single word about the economy. And that means that the Democrats know that it is pretty much unassailable, that the economy is strong, and that's really somewhere they don't want to go.
Yeah. Tim, one interesting thing from last night is that everybody in Washington is talking about Julian Castro going after Joe Biden. They say he was too tough. Now, it actually seemed to me quite a bit like what President Trump did by calling out the party establishment in 2016. I guess from your perspective on the Trump campaign, what did you make of that and that type of tactic?
Well, I think it's fair for someone to call into question what Joe Biden says on the debate stage. I mean, when I was watching it, I had a hard time following what it is that he was saying. And I think, like President Trump says, he has said a number of times that he thinks Joe Biden has lost his fastball, or in other cases he said, not playing with a full deck. But here's the thing about Joe Biden. He was a terrible candidate. The first two times he ran for president, I don't know why anyone thought that he would be a good candidate the third time around. He just has never been a good candidate. He gets on the debate stage, he says all kinds of just word salads, and it's really difficult to chart his meaning and where he's headed with all that stuff. I mean, at one point, he's headed down one path, and the next thing you know, he's talking about a record player for kids when they're going to sleep. And it was really sort of unintelligible. But the fact is, all of these Democrats who are on stage there, not one of them has tangled with Donald Trump yet in a one-on-one, head-to-head general election matchup. And when they do, I think they'll find out exactly what tough campaigning is all about.
Absolutely. So President Trump tweeted earlier this week, he said the campaign has really not yet begun. When do you think the campaign begins? When are you guys planning to really get into campaign mode?
Well, I mean, if you're talking about rally schedule, that is, of course, something that the president has to decide himself. He is the master of his own schedule in the end. We have been generally doing a rally about every 2 weeks. In recent times, it's been, we're on a pace currently at about one per week. We have another one coming up this Monday near Albuquerque. We had one just this past Monday in Fayetteville, North Carolina. So they are picking up a little bit in frequency. But, you know, at the moment, we don't know who President Trump's opponent is going to be. There are still 20-some candidates who are still in the field. There were 10 on the debate stage last night. We don't know who our opponent is going to be. Now, frankly, it doesn't matter to us because the issues that we'll be running against, that the president will be countering, are knowable now. We know there's going to be a government takeover of health care proposed, forcing people off and eliminating private health insurance. We know that because of their adherence to the Green New Deal, that Democrats will come after and try to end and eliminate the entire fossil fuel industry and the more than 10 million jobs that go along with that. We know they'll have a permissive, to the point of open borders, immigration policy and refuse to enforce our borders and refuse to enforce immigration policy and give free health care paid for by the taxpayers to those who do make it here illegally and break our laws to be here in this country. So we know that. It doesn't matter to us which candidate is our opponent. So sometime next summer, once we know who our opponent actually will be, that's when the general election begins.
So, Tim, are the numbers in? Do we know how much the president's campaign raised off of the debate last night?
No, I haven't heard those numbers, and you know there is generally a spike in fundraising, particularly in online small dollar fundraising when something like that happens, and there is a reaction to what the Democrats are doing, because when the Democrats get on stage last night, like they have done about once a month for the past few months, it really is, we believe, last night was a 3-hour long infomercial for the president's re-election. And so anytime you have the Democrats all together on national television espousing their crazy ideas, it is definitely good for the president. It's good for our fundraising. It's good for everybody's morale inside the campaign because we can see what we're up against. And, you know, it's just invigorating for us every time that happens.
Yeah, and then final question for you, Tim. I know that the campaign is working on a workers' coalition event and an event and institution. Can you tell us a little bit about that and what's going on?
Well, we haven't announced those just yet. We do have a very robust and energetic coalitions program. We've already rolled out 2, Women for Trump and Latinos for Trump, and those are all going strong. We have a Latinos for Trump event in Fayetteville, or rather here in Houston yesterday, and we'll have another one near Albuquerque next week in conjunction with our rally out there. And as we roll out the coalitions moving forward, I think there's no secret that the one you just mentioned, the Workers' Coalition, will be a factor. We'll also be reaching out to black voters because the president's message and record regarding issues in the black community are very strong and something that we feel is worth touting and reaching out and trying to gather more support in those communities. So there will be a concerted effort, and as we're ready to make those announcements, we will definitely be making them public.
Got it. Well, Tim, thank you so much for joining me live from Houston. We really much appreciate it.
Yep, I thank you very much. Thanks for your time.
Absolutely. All right, we'll have more Rising for you right after this.